Welcome back everyone and Happy New Year. Today's the day we get going on the clutch and flywheel on the D16 Z6. Alright you guys, so you remember before the break I talked about a couple big announcements, right? Well, I've got some really cool things in the works. One of them happens to do with this box right here. It warrants its own episode. I'm not going to touch on this just yet. I'm going to have another episode coming out this coming Thursday where I'm actually going to talk about what's going on in this box, but the bigger picture as well. You'll see what I'm talking about. Look out for that video on Thursday. Alright you guys, so stage 3 pressure plate with a stage 1 disc and also lightweight flywheel from Action Clutch. Now I went with the stage 3 pressure plate because it is 170% stronger than an OEM setup. And then I also went with the stage 1 disc because it's going to mesh with this to try to give me the result I want. So with the stage 3 pressure plate, it grabs 170% stronger than the OEM, but on that street disc, it will still allow me to have some drivability. Like you'll be able to feather the clutch still. You know, everything you read about stage 3 clutches is like, oh man, like you're gonna kill your left leg, bro. And like, we'll see, you know, who knows? I'm sure it's going to be much harder to press the clutch pedal, but I always felt it was kind of weak in the first place. Guess I'm just that strong, right? But with the stage 1 disc, it says it's a street disc, but it's meant for track as well. Like this combination should really give me that drivability I want going to the track and be able to rip it at the track and then drive right back home with it all. They give you the clutch alignment tool as well. Plus here's the new pilot bearing for the flywheel. And here is the new throwout bearing for the clutch fork. And as you guys know, I also got the lightweight flywheel from Action Clutch. Now this one they claim is 50% the weight of an OEM setup, but so this seems like a really nice piece. I know that there's maybe some back and forth opinion on this. Like I know some of the guys who are into track racing say like, oh, you know, the revs will drop too much. You know, I don't know. I have to experience it for myself. I've never driven on it. I think maybe in my mind, the opposite end of that is, well, if the revs drop too much, they're also going to rev up faster. So does that negate that kind of thing? I don't know. I'm going to find out. All right, so as you guys remember, I had already taken off the clutch and flywheel from the old engine. There's the new rear main seal. Here are the bolts that I will be using to put all this back together. All right, so I've got my torque wrench here. We're going to go ahead and put this to 87 foot-pound because that's what these bolts require to go back on the engine. We're going to use our star spline socket on the wrench to go ahead and torque them down. All right, so before we go torquing that thing down, we actually need to install the pilot bearing on the flywheel. Okay, so here we're working with the flywheel, and there are two different sides to this thing. This is the part that actually faces the transmission, and then there is the back side. The reason I mention that is because there's a little lip inside of this hole here, and that's where the pilot bearing is going to go in and sit down right in there. Go ahead and put this pilot bearing down in there, and then we're going to take our rubber mallet and start to tap it into place. And you can see in there that it's up against that lip, and that means that it's fully seated. Okay, so now back up at the engine, we've got the flywheel here. This side right here, we want facing the transmission. These are little dowels right here that you'll use to actually line up the clutch pressure plate. So pretty hard to get that wrong, but figured I should mention it. And then that's the new pilot bearing sitting inside there. So we're just gonna line this guy up here, obviously with the holes that you see. And then I'm gonna start these by hand, then we'll go ahead and torque them down. Okay, so that's all those star spline bolts hand tightened. Now I've done this job once before, and this was maybe the more difficult part of doing this, because overall it's not very difficult, right? But torquing these bolts down, it's recommended that you use the torque wrench, and you need 87 foot-pound on these bolts. Now, maybe you can use a gun, maybe you've done it before. I don't know. The only thing I've ever read is do not use a gun. So what you need to do is you need to stop the flywheel from actually spinning. So you have to jam a hammer or a crowbar or something in here to get this flywheel to not turn while you're torquing. Now when we're torquing this thing, you know, I'm gonna be leaning this way, you know, righty-tighty, and that's gonna wanna spin, I can't even spin it, here we go. That's gonna wanna spin the whole motor. So we're gonna go ahead and try to use one of these hammers. I forget how I did it before exactly, but let's try to figure this out here. You kind of just put it on in here so that the flywheel won't turn. I don't know, let's give that a go. So we're at our 87 foot-pound, and you want to go in the crisscross pattern when you're torquing these things down. So I'm actually tightening these up a bit more, get them to the point where they need to start really putting some leverage into them. The hammer should hold itself into place. Okay, so you're just gonna have to take my word for that. Those are torqued down to 87 foot-pound, and that's what you gotta do too, however you end up doing it. But so I jammed the hammer in here, it just holds the teeth on that flywheel and it does not budge. But I had to like bear hug the engine, you know, and like 87 foot-pound into that thing. But yeah, so all 6 of those are done, flywheel on. Okay, looks good, right? So this is essentially like a brake rotor disc on here. We're gonna take some brake parts cleaner, go ahead and shoot along this right here, and then take a nice clean cloth and wipe it down. Because that is essentially touching this disc right here, the clutch disc, and then that mates up with the other side of the pressure plate, which is also like a brake rotor disc. Those things, you know, just sandwich together, and that's what holds and turns everything. So we need to make sure that's a nice clean surface. All right, so next we're gonna be putting the clutch disc on. Now there's 2 sides to this thing. You'll see this side with the springs and it's kind of flat, and then this side where it's sticking out. This side where it's sticking out faces the transmission, so away from the engine there. So we're gonna go ahead and put this guy on with the clutch alignment tool. This just feeds right on through the clutch disc, and then we go ahead and put that on with everything else, and that will keep it in place. And now that leaves us with the pressure plate. Now you'll notice there's different holes going around the pressure plate. There are a lot of different holes on this one here, but you'll see there's like a bigger hole next to a smaller hole. We're gonna go ahead and line that up with what you see on the engine or on the flywheel here. So you'll see like this one right here, it's the dowel pin next to this guy. It's a little closer than this one right here, dowel pin and that. You can see where there's a gap that's different between those two. So we're just gonna find that on here and then go ahead and line it on up. But first, I'm actually going to be flipping this guy over, and we're gonna do the same thing using our brake parts cleaner. We're gonna shoot this up and then go ahead and wipe it down. Make sure that surface is nice and clean. All right, so I ended up using my hammer again so that I could torque it properly. That can come out, and also the alignment tool. Okay, so day 2, ran out of time yesterday. I'm gonna go ahead and start messing with the transmission. So for those of you who don't know, this is an SI trans that was attached to my old motor. I'm gonna be pulling that off. We'll go ahead and clean it up. All right, so that's it out. So we got the trans cleaned up a bit here. It's just less greasy, you know? I'm not trying to make it look perfect or nothing, just not full of grease like it was. What I need to do now is take this clutch fork. I'm gonna re-grease the little ball joint thing in here, making sure that this butterfly pin is sitting correctly. Then I'm gonna take this new notchy bearing that came with the action clutch stuff. I'm gonna grease it up with this high temp stuff, and then we'll go ahead and put it back on this input shaft. All right, so we got the high temp wheel bearing grease. This stuff is pretty gnarly, so do wear gloves. This is the input shaft right here, and this is the little ball here where the clutch fork sits in, and it kind of pivots on that, so you want to make sure it's nice and greased up. So just take a little bit of this grease here and go ahead and work it into the splines on the input shaft. There's like little grooves in there, you'll see, so you know what I've read is just try to get them all in there. Not like super coated or nothing, but just make sure it's coated. And then also some on the back here where the throwout bearing will sit. And then I'm also gonna take some and put on this ball piece here. A good, healthy dab of the grease on there. So that thing is constantly getting worked. Okay, so now onto the clutch fork. You see this guy right here is called a butterfly pin. I'm gonna go ahead and take that out for right now. And you see there's all the old grease in there still. Just gonna go ahead and work that out. Okay, so that's all cleaned up. Now I'm gonna take some of the new grease, go ahead and dab it on in there, and just surrounding it. See, the new grease, looks like a bunch of snot sitting in there. Oh, transmission, are you sick? Butterfly pin, go ahead and clean that guy off. And now with this pin, you want to make sure that it is facing down like that, and that the two little wings come out the sides on the fork. And there's also another hole here that this part sticks out of. So let me just show you. Go ahead and put this guy down in there. Lean it in. You kind of pinch them together and make sure it sits like that. All right, so I'm getting ready to put the bearing and the fork back on. This is like not a difficult process, but it's a little weird. So you gotta just make sure you do it correctly. So I'm gonna try to show it the best I can in the video here. Okay, so this fork piece right here, this butterfly pin, this little part right here with the dimple on the other side, that needs to sit on this little ball here, and that's what this thing will pivot on. So here's the new throwout bearing. We need to go ahead and slide this together now. So you can slide those two pieces together. See how that's sitting? And then it all needs to be connected in at the same time here. So bearing goes on, pin, and then we need to make sure the pin is sitting around that ball. The hydraulic fluid is pushing this little arm here, and that works the clutch fork and the throwout bearing on the input shaft. And I just kind of work it like this just to make sure everything is staying in place. And that's because this pin is grabbing this ball right behind here. All right, so there we are, guys. Pretty cool, right? Everyone's excited for this moment, I hope. We got the action clutch, new lightweight flywheel, all ready to go. Trans is prepped, ready to go. We just gotta put them together. So backbreaking time. Who said it was easier putting this thing back on the floor? No. Okay, I've been fighting with this thing for a minute, man, and good Lord. You know, when it was in the car when I did this before, I was able to kind of jack up the engine a little bit and like move it and then whittle the trans on. Like, this is as close as I'm getting it right now, and it's just still always got this gap. And you know, I don't want to just keep forcing it in there and like chew up the teeth on the input shaft or anything. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to wait for Trav. I'm even wondering if maybe we go ahead and put just the long block in the bay first, like hook it up. I could actually stand in the bay with it as he's jacking it up, and we can try to at least get that set. And then I can put some bricks up under it to support it like I had before, and then we can jack up the trans again. I can't get it myself, or at least I don't have the patience for it today. I don't know, one or the other. So we are getting really close. Trav is gonna be coming over, I believe this next weekend, and we are gonna get this thing up in the bay. I don't know that we'll be starting it or not, because we gotta put it all back together and all that kind of crap, but we'll get to where we get to, okay? So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Talk to you in the comments.